As the year comes to a close, now is the perfect time to look back on all of the books that I read this year. So here are my top 10 reads of 2025. There is no order to them. They are simply separated by my 5-star books and my 4.5-star books. And then I'm just talking about them in the order in which I read them. So let's get started with my 5-star reads. My first new 5-star read of the year was Nora Goes Off Script by Annabelle Monaghan. Nora is an author who sold the story of the end of her marriage, and that story is now being made into a movie. They come to her house to film on site, and when the whole crew leaves, she finds the guy, Leo, who is cast to play her ex-husband in this movie, is on her porch asking if he can stay for a couple of weeks. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I pictured myself a romance, fantasy, mystery lover, so when I opened this women's fiction with a subplot of romance book, I had very low expectations for it. Are you kidding? I loved this book. I was so drawn in to the characters and the story that I think I binge read most of this in one single day. Annabelle Monaghan's writing is beautiful, but not super complicated, so my little dumb pea brain doesn't get too mixed up. Annabelle Monaghan has now become an auto-buy author for me after reading her books this year. My next 5-star read was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This book is a prequel to the original Hunger Games trilogy, following Haymitch through the 50th Hunger Games. Because, of course it was. This book had me ugly crying in public. I'm not sure a book has ever made me sob as hard as this book did. Suzanne Collins has this uncanny ability to make you care about characters that you know are going to die from the beginning. Okay, that's not a spoiler. If you've read anything in the Hunger Games series, it's not a spoiler that characters are going to die in this book. You can't help but get attached to characters knowing that from page 1, they're going to die. I will read anything Suzanne Collins writes. She could write a book for each of the 74 Hunger Games, and I would read each and every single one of them. Next up we had The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Clementine loses her aunt, who she is very close to, and she inherits her apartment. When she moves into this new apartment, she discovers that it has magical qualities to it, and it can travel 7 years in the past. Specifically to when a really cute guy lived in the apartment. This book had me giggling and kicking my feet. I believed in the romance the entire time, which is a super big thing for me. Because sometimes I will read books and I feel like the characters just do not have any sort of chemistry whatsoever or any compatibility. But this one, page 1, I was like, yes, these two belong together. They were down bad for each other from the beginning, and I loved it. And Ember in the Ashes by Sabah Tahir. Now, Leah is a scholar, and her people have been completely taken over by the Marshall Empire. The book opens, and Leah's brother has just gotten arrested and thrown in a Marshall prison. So she goes to the Scholar Resistance to offer her services, her assistance, in exchange for help breaking her brother out of prison. She goes undercover to the Marshall Empire's military school, and there she meets Elias, who is training to be the most elite form of soldier in the Marshall Empire. However, he absolutely hates it. This book was another surprise. This is the high I've been chasing since the first time I read Fourth Wing. Plot points that genuinely shocked me, and a storyline that draws you in like no other. And this one had a bonus of being beautifully written. I have very quickly fallen in love with Sabah Tahir's writing. The way it flows just draws you in so naturally, and it's one of those books that you get completely lost in. That also was surprising for me to rate this a 5 stars because this is the first book in the Ember and the Ashes series, and I feel like usually you don't really like the first book in a series because it's got so much world building, so much explanation and politics, that it's not until you get to the later books in the series that you actually really start to enjoy it. However, this one, immediate 5 stars. The Last Olympian by Rick Riordan. This is the final book in the... What series is this? Camp Half-Blood? Delivery man just walked past the window and scared the life out of me. I don't remember what this particular series is called. My favorite part of this book was the battle scene. I feel like a lot of books, when they have battle scenes, it's written as an unenthusiastic catfight, but not this book. So I enjoyed reading this book and being able to fully picture in my head what was going on during the battle scene. Also, yes, I know, I can't believe it took me this long to read Percy Jackson. And then my final 5-star of the year was A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. Now this is the second book in the Ember and the Ashes series. If I loved the first one, of course I was gonna love the second one. Like, need I say more? Well, those were all my 5-star reads of the year. Now let's move on to my 4.5-star reads of the year. The first book I rated 4.5 stars this year was Red Rising by Pierce Brown. You're following Darrow, who is a Red, the lowest of the low caste in their society. Earth was destroyed and now humanity lives on Mars, and the Reds are tasked with the job of making the surface of Mars inhabitable for humans. Only Darrow finds out that humans have been living on the surface for a long time, and his people have been exploited for years. So now Darrow is becoming a Gold, the top caste, in order to be able to tear the society apart from the inside out. Good grief! This was one of the first books I read this year, and I low-key had a bit of trouble remembering what it was about. A lot of the plot in this book was very similar to the Hunger Games, so of course I was gonna love it. When I was reading the plot summary and the synopsis to kind of jog my memory about what was happening in this book, it appeared that there was not as much happening as I remember it when I was reading the book. The plot points were just drawn out in such a way that when you were reading it, it made it feel like there was a lot happening. I feel like my brain was a bit tricked. Fearless. This is the third book in the Powerless series. I would say the last book in the trilogy. However, that's a different story. Go watch my Finding 5-Star Reads video to find out what I'm talking about. I think this was a great conclusion to this story. I loved Powerless. Reckless, not so much. And this book definitely redeemed the series a little bit. I wouldn't say it's the best romantasy I've ever read in my life, but I enjoyed it. Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter. This is the sequel to the iconic book Better Than the Movies, and this place takes 2 years after the events of Better Than the Movies, and Liz and Wes have broken up, but now they're off at school, and Wes decides now is the perfect time to win Liz back. You usually don't see authors write sequels to their romance novels. Most of the time everything can be wrapped up in a neat little bow by the end of the book, but this book kind of goes on to explore the question, what happens after happily ever after? How often do you read a romance book and you're like, yeah, those people are for life? With the dynamics that a lot of romance couples have, I'm like, you're gonna be lucky if you last the end of the month. These characters, I fell back in love with them and their story, and I had genuinely such a fun time reading this book. And then finally, we have Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. Alice and Hayden are in a tiny little town in Georgia, meeting with Margaret Ives to compete to see who gets to be the one to tell her story. Margaret Ives was a part of a very elite family, very scandalous family back about 50 years ago, but once everyone disappeared off the face of the earth, no one really knows what happened to them. And now she has finally decided it is time for her to tell her story. But who is going to get the honor of doing so? I was enraptured with this book. I honestly could have read another 400 pages of this. I loved it. And this book is split between telling the story of Margaret Ives and her family and telling the story of Alice and Hayden in present day. And so you do get a significantly less amount of story about Alice and Hayden and their romance. I still believed it at the end of this. Now, how is that possible? Some authors cannot even do that in a full-length novel focused specifically on the couple. I had originally rated this book a 5 stars, however, as I get further away from when I read this book, I think it's more of a 4.5 stars. I still love funny story much more than this book. So this book gets a 4.5 stars. So those are my top 10 books that I read this year. 6 5 stars and 4 4.5 stars. I would have thought that this list was going to be longer. Last year, I swear I had like 25-star reads. Anyways, guys, that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you enjoy this type of content. Comment down below your last book that you gave a 5 stars, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content in the future. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!